stars come to play. He's the biggest of them all. Step back, 4-3. Phoenix forced a turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance.
Oh my goodness!
2 on the clock.
Hello, welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. It's Beyond the Buzzer. The three OGs are back on your screens and in your ears. Ryan Tucker hosting the show today with Josh Higgins, NBL expert, and Jeremy Dark. I don't even have a nickname for you today. I'm just so happy that the three of us are back. How are we, boys?
The three amigos. Oh, mate, I'm pumped. I don't know. I'm that pumped to get into today's show. NBL basketball, it's the greatest time of the year, and all of a sudden we've been messed around with a week and a half fever break, mate. I don't know what on earth we're going to talk about besides obviously the games that were, but I'm excited to have the three amigos back in the seat and obviously talking away. And shout out to all the boys that have been on, but there's a special feeling with the three of us on the cameras, I reckon, boys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, boys, for filling in while I don't know. I guess I've been drinking beer and eating chicken wings most of all and schnitties. But I appreciate all the help. But it's great. You can see the excitement on all of our faces because we were just pumped to be back together. The boys are back.
Bringing the band back together. And it has been, Jez and I were speaking, Josh, just before we got on about how long ago it was that the two of us were on a podcast together, because we've been kind of rotating around different spots and we've been away. I've been skiing. Jez has been in Czech. You were also away, I think, there at the very beginning of this kind of span of pods. But boys, we're back. And as you said, Josh, there is some stuff to speak about in terms of the play-in games that have happened leading into the semi-finals, where we're just about to start the semi-final race now. But there is a lot of stuff to unpack. Teams have failed. Teams have gone well. There is just so much to talk about. But before we get into that, let's shout out all these fan podcasts that are still going, even though, like the Bullets broadcast, their team was out a long time ago. Tassie Jack Jumpers, their team was out a long time ago. But Josh, what do we got? What can the listeners and viewers find out more on the Basketball Fix channels?
Oh, I guess whatever you want to find out, really. Like, these fan-driven podcasts are incredible. You know, this is for fans, by fans. And I know that's a saying that gets thrown around a lot when it comes to a lot of things on social media and everything like that. But genuinely, these are the greatest podcasts that, from a team standpoint, are out in the NBL community, because they're opinionated, but they're fair, and they want the best for their teams. And I don't think there's anything better than hearing positive sort of criticism for your individual team from a standpoint of getting better for the future, everything like that. But honestly, all these episodes, I think, have far surpassed not only my expectations, but all of you guys' expectations as well. And if you haven't already jumped on, make sure you go and jump on, because everyone's not done yet. They're going to put their little list managing perspectives on as well. They're going to have a lot of off-season content. They're going to be following all their contractor players around, whether it's in the NZNBL or, you know, some other European companies or countries, I guess, or some leagues like that, or obviously the NBL 1 competitions as well. So there is plenty going on, and obviously make sure you go and check out the Basketball Fix website as well. Jez has absolutely done a killer article there with obviously all the final structure as well. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out if you want to keep up to date with all of the NBL playoff stuff. And coming soon is an NBL free agency tracker and rumor mill from the Basketball Fix as well. That'll be out over the next couple of days. So free agency, it's one of my favorite times in all of sports, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the rumors that we hear at the Basketball Fix and around the NBL community as well.
You don't seem like a gossip girl, Josh, but, you know.
No, I'm not a gossip girl, and I make that clear around the NBL community. If you tell me something, I will not tell anyone else. Maybe I'll just write it down so everyone else can see it.
And Jez, the memes have been going hot as well on the Basketball Fix podcast Insta. Josh is killing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it sort of elevates everything we do. We try and be serious. We try and have fun. But the one thing that's taken the Basketball Fix to the next level is the meme king that's sitting above us if you're watching YouTube. He's at the top for a reason, because there's no one that does NBL memes, memes, or whatever you want to call them. Then the man,
if you're over
then the man above us,
34.
he's the meme king. Absolutely killing it. Like, it's just good fun and something you can have a laugh about. You take everything with a grain of salt, but at the same time, there's a little bit of truth in every single meme that comes out on the Basketball Fix.
Well, boys, there are a group of people that aren't laughing right now, and it is the fans of the Sydney Kings.
You can
Now,
segue, Ryan. Beautiful stuff.
mate, I'm the king of the segues. The Sydney Kings came into NBL 25 with so much expectation. They had one of the most stacked rosters. They had a championship coach, not only from the NBL, but the Australian Boomers coach in Brian Goorjian, and so much expectation was leveled on the shoulders of these guys, and they failed to live up to it. Now there is so much to pick apart here. Boys, I want to start on the roster and the way that the players were used through the season. And Josh, we've spoken extensively about Cam Oliver, and that's where I want to go first and hear your thoughts about how that affected the team's success this season.
Well, mate, firstly, the vibes are absolutely high today. I'm excited for this episode. And I thought when you were asking about Cam Oliver, you're going to be asking about collecting your $50 off me, mate. And I was going to say, we'll do that again for next season, double or nothing. But Cam Oliver was a guy who, when given his opportunity, was an absolute superstar. We had Damon Lowry on the show a few weeks ago, and he 100% backed what I've been saying the whole season. I think a lot of people are in agreement to this as well. But this playing game in particular against the Adelaide 36ers, he finished the game with 19 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 3 blocks. Now, I don't understand all the criticism defensively around him because he came up against 2 or 3 of the best big men in the league in Jarrell Martin, Isaac Humphries, and obviously Montrezl Harrell as well, and well and truly held his own as pretty much the only standalone big for the Sydney Kings, with obviously Xavier Cooks being out for personal reasons as well. So, this is where it's going to be interesting going forward for the Sydney Kings because I'm not 100% sure who they're going to bring back. All reports and everything that it looks like from a social media standpoint, I don't see Jalen Adams returning. I don't see Cam Oliver returning. And they're probably 2 guys who are top 3 or 4 players on the Sydney Kings roster. It looks like it's going to be really, really revamped. And before I go on a slight little run, before you obviously get into other questions as well about the Sydney Kings, I don't think that this was the perfect roster for Brian Goorjian. I wrote this in the group chat at the Basketball Fix. Obviously, this is a stacked team, and I think he knew it was a stacked team, but I don't think he knew it was a stacked team for him. This was a very Sydney Kings lineup. This is the LA Lakers sort of stuff where it's Showtime basketball. And that's where it does my head in to a certain degree because whilst these guys are super talented players, guys like, Tyler Robertson and Alex Tui and, these backup players like even, Kawop Noi and Makaloch Malawatch, all those sort of guys, they're flashy players. They're not grit and grind out players. They're not defensive-minded first players in which Gorge has always had on his teams when they've had success. So I think this would have been doing Gorge's head in all year. The amount of comments we heard, we're one piece away, they signed Lamonte Turner. All of a sudden, that went to absolute shit, and he no longer was on the team after just flying over to Australia. So, yeah, I don't know. This has been a big basket case. We speak of Adelaide, being a basket case over the last couple of years. Well, I don't know if we can necessarily throw them into the conversation, but I think in terms of a standpoint of they should have won an NBL championship, they really, really killed that expectation for sure.
Jez, before, when we were kind of talking about how we're going to present this in the show and how we can compare this team to another team in another sport, you thought that they were very similar to the Dallas Cowboys. Can you give us a bit of your take on that?
Well, it's a little bit like that. They've got, this flashy owner, Jerry Jones, throwing money around like nobody's business, but sort of just trying to piece together a roster without sort of thinking things through. A little bit like what Josh said. It's like you bring in this coach that's defensive minded and then the pieces don't really fit. It's a little bit like with Jerry Jones. He pays his quarterback, Dak Prescott, the most amount of money of anybody, even though he sort of can't even win in the playoffs anyway. He brings back Ezekiel Elliott, an old dog, a little bit, say, like Xavier Cooks had all that success, before he left and then comes back. And then that's turned to shit a little bit now as well. You're just sort of buying pieces without sort of thinking things through and making sure that you've got the right chemistry in the group. So that's sort of the biggest comparison when you're thinking about the Dallas Cowboys. But the biggest of all is coming into a season with the expectation, especially from the fans, we're going to win everything. This is our year. We're really going to do it. But over the last 2 years after they won their 2 championships, they've failed absolutely miserably. So the pieces aren't there. But that's the trouble. You win 2 championships, you go for your third, and you fall into this situation now, especially when you've got cash and you've got the league behind you and you've got the pedigree to be able to bring players there. You just sort of try and buy your way to a win, and it feels a little bit like that's what the Sydney Kings did in this instant, especially this year. Just picking up players and not really working out, okay, shit, we really should have thought about getting a proper 5, a big piece, a pretty important piece in this whole puzzle, and you're using probably one of your most skillful guys like Xavier Cookson, almost playing him a little bit out of position at times because he was having to move into that role. You've got a young star like Lepepe coming in that's untested in the league, and he's going in, and then you've got Cam Oliver and he wants more time, and it's all just an absolute mash. So it's tough to be at the top, and it's tough to hold your spot at the top. As we know, it's really, really hard to create a dynasty that's longer than the 2 years that they already had. Hard to go for that third buckle, and they've just sort of gone wayward now. I think they need to go back to thinking about what they have, working on the development of their players, which has to be, as we've always said, the groundwork, the framework of your team has to be these local developed players that you need to have. Because if you're trying to buy superstars left, right, and centre, it's eventually going to fall to shit because you just don't have the right chemistry in the group. And that's exactly what happened to the Sydney Kings this season.
No, you're bang on, mate. And I want to throw one more little bit of fire, obviously, for your comparison with the Dallas Cowboys to the Sydney Kings as well. You spoke of Jerry Jones, and I'll speak of Paul Smith. Biggest delusional basket case owner in the NBL. That guy loves calling out people left, right, and centre. We saw it all the time. That COVID year where obviously the Sydney Kings and the Perth Wildcats were in that grand final series, he was calling out the Perth Wildcats left, right, and centre. He's a continual pest when it comes to the NBL media world. But it is quite funny. That's the thing as well. We've got to take it all with a grain of salt. He's doing something for the game, but I think that comparison between, Jerry Jones and Paul Smith is a genuine one. And the other one as well, is the old saying, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. There couldn't be a truer saying for the Sydney Kings this season. They are the most stacked roster in NBL history, but never wanted to work hard, and you could see that on the court when it came to the weekend as well.
Jez, do you think that a different coach would have got a different outcome here, or is it just plainly the roster and the situation that no matter who was there coaching this team, they were always destined to fail?
No, I think you relate exactly to what Josh said in his first rant of the day, and it won't be the last, but in the first one, where it's just he's a defensive-minded coach. Look what he was even doing with the Boomers. It's the same thing. He was working on a system where defensive first. They led the NBL pretty much the whole year, I believe, in opposition points. And they were topping most opposition shooting statistics because, that's his system. And when you've got all these guys that have personalities and flair and need to be in the limelight, you almost need to embrace that. I think you've got it. There should have been more fireworks. There should have been more flair. There should have been more attitude. He was sort of getting on, I think, Cam Oliver a little bit at one stage when he was sort of getting up in everybody's business when he was doing a big dunk and celebrating and stuff. I think that's what you almost need to embrace that. And they should have been a high octane, high offense team because that's the talent that they did have. Jalen Adams can put up 40. Cam Oliver can go, 20 and 10 every game. Xavier Cooks can do the same thing. Let them play, and they should have just exploded, I think, on the offensive and then still played. Obviously, you got to play a defensive game, but they probably would have got further, and maybe the chemistry would have been built and the team would have gelled together a little bit more if you could obviously match those big personalities. But I think things could have absolutely been different if they had a different coach or different players.
Josh, to finish off the Sydney Kings talk, I was trying to figure out, what other teams in other sports could we relate, or who is like the Sydney Kings? And I'm thinking in the NRL, I was really struggling to pick out. It's based on beating the bad teams and losing against the good teams and underperforming against expectations. It's got to be Cronulla Sharks. How about in the AFL or another sport? What do you reckon?
Oh, it's a tough one, eh? Similar going off the back of what you're been touching on, obviously, in terms of teams with quite a bit of talent and potentially getting it done against the poorer teams, but not the top teams. Port Adelaide. They continually show that they can't beat top teams in the AFL, and they can just kill the bottom teams. They finished second last year for a reason, because they had a really, really easy draw and they dominated everyone below them. But that top six, they really struggled against, and obviously still finished second. But there's a reason why they went out and didn't make a grand final. And Ken Hinkley is now a succession plan, obviously, which you'll probably see with Gorge over the next couple of years, mate. He'll have a succession plan basically where they'll send him into retirement. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, mate. But I'd go with the Port Adelaide Football Club for a direct comparison between the NBL and the AFL.
Yes, definitely. All right, boys, let's have a quick break. We'll come back and we'll get into Montrezl Harrell. All right, boys. Now, the biggest story, anything in the NBL this year has to be Montrezl Harrell, and he's just existing in the NBL sphere. And I want to kind of get into this. So there's a couple of different things to speak about here, and it's Adelaide, it's Montrez, it's KD, it's the fans, it's the coaching. There's so much to break down. Josh, I want to go to you first, mate. And I want to get your just instant reaction. Yes or no, was it worth him coming to the league?
100% yes. Like the conversation around Montrez coming to the league is 110, 120, 130% yes. The eyes that he's brought to the league from an international standpoint can't be replaced with anyone else in the NBL. Bryce Cotton has been as good as he has, but he hasn't drawn the NBA eyes like Montrezl Harrell has done, because Montrez is a huge name in the NBA, former Sixth Man of the Year, former, guy who's been on some massive teams, whether it's the LA Lakers or the LA Clippers, the top teams in the NBA. He comes with expectations, he comes with baggage, but he comes with a lot of eyes and attention. And that's been beneficial for the Adelaide 36ers first and foremost, but also the NBL from major standpoints as well. So I think, to answer your question quite briefly, and I'm sure you've got a couple other backup questions as well, so I'll leave a few more of my rants for a short amount of time, but he's 100% worth it for the NBL, and I think it was a bit of a success in that department.
And Jez, there was a lot of discussion, especially around the time of the suspension, whether he would return and be a part of the run that the Adelaide 36ers were going to do towards the finals or the playoffs, whatever you want to call them. But there's no denying that the guy is a baller, and the stats he was putting up week in, week out, or game in, game out, were just undeniable. And pairing up with KD as well, those guys were excessive in their ball playing. Did that take away a little bit from the team dynamic? We spoke extensively about the bench players not receiving enough time for the Adelaide 36ers this season. Did that take away from that, or was it plainly just, Mike will say, I gotta play these guys because I don't have a choice if we're going to win?
I think for Mike Wells, you've got to put the ball in the hands of the guys that are going to win you the game. So I think that's pretty much what he did. You saw KD. He had the highest usage rate, I believe, in the NBL. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. They're definitely up there. And you saw the ball going to Montrez almost on every possession as well. So obviously that's where where everything had to be, their whole tactic had to be driven from. So if you're looking to win, and that's what they needed to do, the ball was in the right people's hands in that team for that moment. But I think we discussed this a lot. What was it the best decision then for Adelaide as a club and an organisation to have these two guys driving the whole team? I don't think so, because I think in the long run it's certainly going to hurt them. They've brought in two guys. Like, we don't know about what KD's plans are, but obviously the number one reason was to have Montrez there. Montrez was there to make the NBA. He's going to be there. He's going to put fans in the stands and brought all this attention to the NBL. But for an organisation that is been underwhelming, to put it very politely, I think maybe they need to really sort of think about some of the decisions that they're making. They got some short-term success. They come back into the play-in, missed the playoffs, and brought all these eyes to the Adelaide club and to the NBL. But in the long run, it sort of was a little bit of a detriment, because we saw, obviously, Isaac Humphries get much less time on the court than what he expected leading into the season. And even when you're talking about sort of these younger players, we saw Nick Marshall. That's one of the best talents in the NBL. Not even play minutes in the sort of the second half of the season almost. So that hurt the club. I think it's even out there in the rumour mill that he's leaving Adelaide, which is a massive loss for them, considering how what a promising talent he is. So yeah, like you've obviously got to do what you got to do to win, but I think in the long run for Adelaide, they need to start making some better decisions about who they're bringing in, because they need to work on the framework of their club before they start trying to get eyes on there, because there's nothing that brings more eyes to the club than winning, and they're not winning, and they're going to struggle next year because they're going to have a whole new roster again, and it's all going to be up to chance. So I don't know.
Yeah, so just on that point, and Josh, I'll throw to you here, because the guys came in and it was a bit of a, I guess you'd say, a last-minute decision to bring Montrezl over to the league, and it had its effects with, now the names escape me, who got dropped to bring him in?
Alex Starling.
And, Adelaide were in a position, we spoke about the basket case for the organisation. I think they needed to win and win now to regain some ascendancy with their fans and in the league as an organisation, because they were just down and out. They brought over Dejan Vasiljevic, Josh, from the Sydney Kings, and essentially gave him the keys to the city and said, this is your team, you're the main guy. And then they bring in a profile like Montrezl Harrell. How you see that affecting the team chemistry? How do you see it affect DJ? And did that have an effect, you think, in his success throughout the season, especially up into this last kind of couple of games?
Well, I think, to be fair to the Adelaide 36ers organisation, which I haven't been all season long or probably for some time now, but it wasn't Mike Wells's fault that they handed Dejan Vasiljevic the keys to the city, because he wasn't the guy who handed the keys to the city to Dejan Vasiljevic. It was Scott Ninez. Scott Ninez was the one who was actively campaigning for this guy to be the guy. And then Mike Wells, to his credit, and the organisation went out and signed Kendrick Davis, and then obviously found their way with signing Montrezl Harrell. Now, did Dejan react the way that he probably did? I don't believe so. When you go back and look at some press conferences, like, he was super disappointed about the Scott Ninez conversation, everything like that, because I think deep down he knows he's not that guy. I think he'll try to tell himself every single day, I'm a top 10 player in the NBL, but you're not. You're not a leader. You don't stand up in big moments. There's a reason why you're a role player in all those championship wins for the Sydney Kings. Now, I want to go into this point right now because Montrezl Harrell is being criticised, rightly, for the stuff that obviously was going on Sunday's game against South East Melbourne Phoenix. That last quarter, Dejan Vasiljevic didn't even look interested. And he didn't even look interested in playing not just that game, basketball in general. Don't tell me right now that you're a star fucking player when you score 3 points per game, you shoot 1 of 6 from the field and 1 of 5 from the 3-point line. You don't care. You genuinely don't care. And I understand, obviously, the usage rates with Kendrick Davis. He's the second highest usage rate in the NBL, only behind Bryce Cotton and by 0.1%. But you can't tell me that you're not interested in potentially having a chance to play the Illawarra Hawks for a spot in an NBL Grand Final. There is no bigger feat. That is where you write your name in the history books, essentially, from being a role player to a star player or a superstar player in the NBL. And the comments that Montrez made, and Kelsey Brown reported it on the court, I know people are like, where are these comments? If you go back and look at it, basically, Montrezl Harrell was calling for Dejan Vasiljevic to be pulled off the court. He's not interested. He doesn't care. Get him off. He's wasting time. He's killing us right now. All those sort of comments. Now, Montrez has been criticised for that, and I think rightly so. And I know he's doing a bit of reflecting on social media. If you've seen a couple of those posts in there, you can tell he's generally feeling bad, but playing a slight victim. You still said those comments, own up to those comments and move on with Dejan Vasiljevic. But you can't tell me that you're a superstar player putting up 3 points per game as the captain of the team, right? This team, he ain't just a star player. He's the star player and the captain of this team. Lead by example. Show us what you've got, and then you go from there. I was disappointed in Dejan Vasiljevic. He's got a lot of potential, but he uses this a lot more than he uses his heart. And that's as simple as it is. He runs his mouth way too much for my liking. And until you show me that you are more than just a scorer, because that is all he is right now, I will not respect you in terms of when we're talking about superstar players in the NBL.
I don't think the comments from Harrell were out of line. Like, I've been in that spot from a young age and through my amateur, football career in Sweden. Like, it's the passion you have for winning a game, especially when your whole season's on the line and you see a guy out on the court, the field, the pitch, wherever you are, that you don't feel is contributing and you can't get him going and is there, actively making you worse. I think he's got all the right to say to the coach, get a rocket up, because maybe it's those words that wake DJ up that say, oh, is someone talking about me like that? Oh, maybe I have to double down and do something here, because obviously I'm not living up to my expectation in his eyes. And I think that's the kind of stuff that maybe players in the NBL have been missing for a lot of time, because they're all so chummy with each other and there's no, you don't have that dog in you. You don't have that fight and that aggressiveness to win like Montrez does and has brought over to this organisation and to the league. I think he was well within his rights to say that. Jez, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to do something, and it is especially when, if you're in quicksand in a situation like that where just everything's going wrong, you have a 20-point lead, it's all falling apart, and then you see a guy that's not really putting in effort, you've got to do something, because nothing's working, and you have to absolutely just fire in and do whatever you think in that time needs to be done or said to get a rocket up someone. But it wasn't and it wasn't just him. Like Mike Wells knew as well. It's the 29 minutes and 33 seconds he played was the least amount of time he's played in 13 games. This is DJ, because he wasn't there. And you saw what he did when he came onto the court. Commentators were saying, oh, it's time for DJ to come on. And they put him on, and he just did exactly like what Damon Lowry said on the show a few weeks back. He just sort of got the ball and sort of looked away and just popped up a loose three and was airballing. Like, it was just uninterested. You need to call those players out. You need to have the right players on the court at the right time that want to win you the game, and he wasn't doing it. So, I don't know. Fair enough. I'll back Montrez in this situation 100%.
No, and let me just be clear right now, though. I wasn't necessarily saying that I didn't agree with the comments. I just think there's still a time and a place for certain comments, because I guarantee you Kelsey would have been PGing those comments down a little bit. There would have been a lot of swearing involved. We know what Montrezl Harrell is. He's an energetic guy, but I still think there's a time and a place for that sort of stuff, and you've got to still trust the coaching staff to a certain degree. In the locker room afterwards, or call a timeout. Yeah, but when you have a timeout, you shouldn't be sitting there on the court screaming and yelling essentially at your teammates. Like, that's the time where you should be focusing on the game. You are still playing a game. You're in the thick of it. Why are you standing on the sidelines screaming to your fucking coach? Like, that's where the difference is. It's not the time and the place. It's essentially the situation they're in. They are giving up runs of points, and all Montrez is thinking about is pulling DJ off. No, refocus, right? You started great against Matt Hurt. Matt Hurt got cooking against you in that second half. He dominated you in that second half because mentally, Montrez did what Montrez does. Loses his cool, goes elsewhere every single time, and there's a reason why. He's a talented player, but he's no longer in the NBA. So that's where I more see it. Call a timeout. Mike Wells needs to have bigger kahunas to call a timeout or to pull him off. That's as simple as it is as well. Like, I think there's a massive reflection more not on Montrezl Harrell, but on Mike Wells in this certain situation as well. So, I don't know. I feel bad for Montrez to a certain degree, because I think he's in between a rock and a hard place. He should be playing basketball. That should be his sole focus. But he's in between a rock and a hard place because he's trying to coach this team, because Mike Wells is probably not capable of it. And also, the other question of it all, who do you bring on for Dejan Vasiljevic? Do you bring on a Keanu Rasmussen, who's going to give you nothing? Do you bring on a Jarrell Martin, who's a completely different player to the team? Jason Kadee had a game and a half, played 26 minutes, and Sunday Detch played well. But Lat Mayen also underperformed as well. It's such a tough spot, because if they had depth, all these issues go away. Dejan Vasiljevic wouldn't have seen 29 minutes. He probably would have seen 19 minutes, to be fair. So, I don't know. I don't know if that clears me up on my perspective on that. I think Montrez is in between a rock and a hard place. I think there's some better times to do it, but at the end of the day, I know it's a basketball game with a lot of meaning, and I guess a lot of feeling in that game as well, being a do-or-die game, and I can also understand both sides of the story as well.
Jez, is he a chance to return to the NBL and to the Sydney Kings under Brian Goorjian next year?
I don't know. It's probably just as good of a chance that Yeah, nah.
Replace
Like
Bryce
I don't
Cotton.
know. Like I think, yeah, I think we were joking about it earlier. You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if he ended up in Melbourne after all of that ruckus. Like you could just see something like that happening, but you just never know with Montrez, and you never know with the NBL, and you never know with the Sydney Kings. And I think whoever throws the most money at him, Montrez is going to go there. If it's here, if it's Japan, if it's wherever, I think Trez is going to go there. This whole sort of experiment for him, I think, like we're focusing sort of what it's done to the league, what it's done to the 36ers, but like Montrez's goal when he come here was obviously to make the NBA again, come back from an ACL rupture. He's trying to like make it back to the NBA. For like the questions you got to think, even though he had an ACL problem, why wasn't there an NBA team that picked him up or threw a little bit of cash at him? Because he obviously has the pedigree. You think one of these sort of satellite teams that needed a spark and needed someone to even lift their ratings or whatever, you'd give him a shot, but he didn't get that. He needed to come here. He put up, great numbers in the NBL, which would be, if it was a younger player on any roster, you'd be saying send them to the NBA straight away, and you'd expect them to get some sort of at least a two-way contract. But did it really work? What was the goal for Montrez when he come here? Make the NBA, and was it because of his statistics, or were some NBA teams or a lot of the NBA teams worried about his attitude and how he is as a person and how he fits in? Has he done that better and improved his chances of getting into a team because of the way he's carried himself through this NBL season? I'm unsure about that. There's been so much drama. It's been great for the NBL. It's been great for the Adelaide 36ers in a sense. But has it been great for Montrezl Harrell? I'm more onto the absolute no than the absolute yes, because he's fighting with fans. He's in like fans' faces. He's fighting with teammates. He's screaming at coaches. I would be cautious if I had all this money in the NBA as an owner and trying to bring in a guy like this that certainly can put up the stats, but is he going to be a self-destructive bomb inside your organization?
Well, maybe the thought isn't that he needs to get back to the NBA. Maybe it's just having a contract at all. Josh, what are your thoughts on his future?
I think the one thing that held him back is 100% his reputation, and he 100% solidified his reputation in a whole in the NBL season. Punching on with fans, probably punching on with teammates behind closed doors. We know, obviously, everything that went on behind the closed doors, the Adelaide 36ers organisation, not attending team huddles, all reports that he was an okay teammate, but there was obviously room for improvement. I don't think that he did anything good for his reputation for the NBA. Now, did he bring eyes to the NBL? 100%. Is this what the NBL is needing at this point of their growth? 100%. They need eyes on them. They are screaming for eyes from a free-to-air standpoint on Channel 7, Channel 9, or Channel 10. They're looking for that big buyer, and this is the guy that can do that. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Bryce Cotton becoming the NBL ambassador, in which the NBL will obviously pay a portion of their contract. Now, I can see a Montrezl Harrell rocking up at a Brisbane Bullets next year, or a Cairns Taipans, or one of these smaller market teams, due to the NBL paying a portion of the salary for no other reason than to make him the figurehead and the focus point of the NBL. Now, that may sound stupid, because why would you make the brand ambassador of your league a dude who was punching on with fans last year? No idea. But he brings a shit ton of eyes. Every time we post a meme about Montrezl Harrell, it's 100% the most viewed meme that we've ever posted. So, I don't know. There's one thing there, because Larry Kesselman was very quick to say no to the Bryce Cotton rumours of being the NBL ambassador. That only leaves a handful of players if they are genuinely looking to do this in NBL 26.
But he was basically the ambassador anyway. He was everywhere. Like there wasn't a week that he wasn't all across the NBL website or on their Instagram. Any quote he ever did, good, bad, or ugly, it was everywhere. Like, and
but
that
I'm more coming from
the plan. Like,
yeah, but I'm more coming from the perspective of everyone knows there's the three big fishes in the NBL. The Perth Wildcats, Melbourne United, and the Sydney Kings. They're the only teams who can afford these big-time players like a Montrezl Harrell. I know Adelaide have squeezed themselves into the cap, but if they don't re-sign or win a championship next couple of years, this team's financial stability and everything like that will be absolutely shot, because they've spent too much money to be finishing fifth place, essentially. So this is where I say, if you want eyes and you want to boost one of these markets or you want to boost one of these states, a la Queensland, for example, who have had a very poor following in the NBL for many, many years, maybe you just go out and say, all right, let's feed them some money. Here you go. Here's Montrezl Harrell for $500,000 a year on your salary cap. They may be paying him $1.1 million, but you're only seeing $500,000 on your salary cap. That gives you a chance to go out and re-sign a Taron Armstrong, a Sam Wardenberg, bring some other star imports into that organization. And they may no longer be the feeder team in the NBL or the development team in the NBL. They may be a genuine chance of winning an NBL championship. So a bit of food for thought there, but it's obviously for the right price. I'd love to see Montrez back in the league, but yeah, I'm not 100% certain. I'm not sure if he'll return to NBL 26.
It's all about the business decisions. Now, boys, we're going to take another quick break. We'll come back and I'm going to ask you if the finals is a 3-horse race or if Southeast Melbourne have a shot. Okay, now, before we went to the break, I mentioned that I want to ask the both of you, and Josh, this is to you first. Is the finals a 3-horse race or does Southeast Melbourne have a fighting chance?
Oh, it's a tough question, mate, isn't it? Because when we look at this organisation from a standpoint of statistics, and I mentioned this on the Wildcat Wrap, there are no teams statistically wise closer than the Perth Wildcats and Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. And if we're going to rule out the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, we may as well rule out the Perth Wildcats from that standpoint as well, because statistically speaking,
tips, mate.
Statistically speaking, though, mate, there is a genuine gap in the market compared to the defensive end of the ball that the Perth Wildcats are going to produce. We talk about it all the time. Is this not the most important time to see defensive basketball? I genuinely think this is where championships are won and lost. It's on the defensive end. Am I right in saying that, boys, or am I incorrect in saying that?
Yeah.
So if we're looking at the Perth Wildcats from a standpoint of the defensive end, which has been spoken about all the time, we may as well rule them out first before we rule the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix out. I genuinely think that this team is a chance of winning the NBL championship. but I genuinely believe this team can win an NBL championship because what I saw on the weekend gave me so much more hope than probably what a lot of other people would have taken out of that game. They come back from 15 points down against the Adelaide 36ers, who are full of firepower. Now, I know they self-destructed, and I completely understand that. And the game before that, they lost to the Perth Wildcats by 30-odd points. But they were in that game until 6 or 7 minutes into that last 6 or 7 minutes to go in that last quarter. So they've shown me that they can knock off Melbourne United. They've shown me they can knock off the Wildcats. They've had some incredible close matches with the Illawarra Hawks this season. I don't think we can rule them out as a genuine title contender. And obviously with the depth that they've got, with the star players that they've got as well, yeah, you can't rule out the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. They were the hottest team about a month and a half ago, Jez. You were saying that. Yeah. Now, if you go and continually say that if you rule this team out, I'll be flabbergasted, to be honest with you, mate.
No, I'm off the wagon, man. I love it. We're talking horses, and they were my dark horse. They were my dark horse. Like 6 weeks ago, I think, heading in, they were on fire. They were unbeatable at John Cain Arena or in Melbourne in general, even when they were playing at the State Basketball Centre. They were off the chain, but they've lost their ability to defend. And then we saw this last week what happens when they can't obviously sink baskets. They had two halves of basketball. The first half against Adelaide, which put them in the massive hole that they had to dig themselves out of. They scored 26 points. And then in the second half against Perth, they scored 36 points. Their quarter numbers there, which they were pulling out in halves of basketball. Like any team that has any sort of defense is going to cause them problems. You can't play for a half a game and expect to win, especially in the postseason. You need to be hot on offense. You need to be hot on defense. They average over 100 points against when they're playing on the road. Now they're going to have to play on the road, 2 games in Illawarra. They're not going to get out of, they're going to be lucky to get out of it in 2, because you can't be shooting like that. It's postseason. You can't, I turned the game on against Adelaide, and they were shooting at 31% in the first half. It's unfathomable. They're not even NBL 1 numbers. You need to be hitting at 50% if you're going to win games. You're going to go up against the hottest offensive team in the league and you're going to shoot at 30%. They're lucky that Adelaide were absolutely trashed themselves and only finished the game at 38% from the field, because anybody else, we saw what happened in Perth. It catches up to you. Perth put on an absolute show and beat them by over 20. So if you can't play defense and then you're playing only one half of offense, you're going to get burnt. And Illawarra are going to absolutely cook them.
Well, you say that, mate, and obviously they've played a 3-game series this year between the two teams. And I know obviously it was a couple of months ago and everything like that. But do you know what the season series is, Jess?
Oh, it could be 3-0 even. Or is it 2-1?
It's 2-1, and the one loss that they had was by 4 points.
It doesn't matter anymore.
But it does.
It doesn't matter.
Because it's
they're
a
not the same team. They were high. They were top 3 in offense. They were top 3 in defense when they were my dark horse. Now you've seen them just fade away because they've stopped playing defense, and now they're relying on their bench players to carry them on offense. You've seen in both games, like Sobey was cold. He didn't score a point in the whole first half. Wieskamp went 0 for 10 against Perth from the field. So these are your scorers. You need these guys to be lifting at this time of year. I love Josh King. He's done an incredible job, and it's going to be great to see what Southeast Melbourne can do with a full season and a full preseason under their belt, because he is a premium coach in my opinion. But they've lost the ball defensively, and then if you're not sinking buckets and you can't defend away from home, you're going to be in big trouble.
But they're still top 3 in the offensive rating, and they're top 4 in defensive rating right now. Like they're still that team. They haven't dropped off.
They scored 85 points against Adelaide.
That's fine though, right? That's the thing. It's a finals game. Like both teams were like stunned mullets to start that game. Both of these teams haven't got much experience in these games, and they're coming up against the Illawarra Hawks, who don't have a shit ton of experience in this either. Like the Illawarra Hawks, I think are probably the team coming into this under the most pressure. Everyone is saying right now, this team is a championship winner. People are saying, give it to them right now. What do we see all the time when teams have this expectation in their heads? They get ahead of themselves. They don't think about this series. They think about the next series. I genuinely think, I'm not saying that the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix are going to win this series, but it wouldn't shock me if they did come away and win this series and win a grand final series as well. So, I don't know. There's just a lot of questions about them. You know, me and you had a bit of banter in our chat, over the weekend with Matt Hurt. I thought he started absolutely poor and got going. And he's the difference factor. Like, I look at the Illawarra Hawks, who's going to stop him? Sam Frolling's not a great defender. Like, he's not going to be the guy who can slow him down. Mason Peatling, he's not too bad, but he's not a Matt Hurt. Like, Matt Hurt kills you in 3 different ways. Get that matchup sorted first. Well, good luck to that. Then you've got Owen Foxwell, who's coming up against Tyler Harvey, is a great defender. He stopped a lot of great players this NBL season. I just don't think we can lock him out. Knock him out right now, out of contention. There's a reason they're a top 4 team, and there's a reason they're in the last 4 teams of the NBL season as well.
Yeah, but
there's a couple of things, boys. Stop. My turn now. You boys have had enough together. There's 2 things that you've touched on here, which are important to take out and look forward to this game. And one of them is that now we're going to a series. So Southeast Melbourne have had 2 poor halves over 2 different games. And the difference comes down to, I think, the adjustments. And what we can see here from this game against Adelaide, as you alluded to, Jez, they, with 4 minutes 30 to go in the second quarter, they'd scored 17 points. And right on the 4:30, they hit a 3 to get them up to 20. They were switching on screens. They were playing small ball. They'd had a few different rotations. Josh King played with a number of different rotations in this game. So right before halftime, it was Air, Glover, Wieskamp, Hunter, and Hurt. So 3 kind of bigger guys, and Air, even Glover, you could say, he's a big guy to be playing at the 2 or the 3. Then straight after halftime, it was Sobey, Foxwell, Wheezy, Hurt, and Hunter again. So they're trying to match this big offense that the Adelaide 36ers were throwing with Jarrell Martin, Montrezl Harrell, and Isaac Humphries. He was testing these lineups throughout the whole first half and early into the second half. And then they had that firepower there. Suddenly they started hitting their their baskets, but they couldn't defend. Exactly what you were speaking about, Jez. They were letting Kendrick Davis and Montrezl Harrell effectively just run to the basket on fast breaks. Then they brought in Air, Lewis, Foxwell, Glover, and Hurt. And that's what that rotation, that lineup, that combination got them back in the game. They had a similar lineup with Kenyon instead of Foxwell, which was earlier in the game, but they were getting monstered defensively. And that's the thing I think is going to make the difference against Illawarra. Illawarra cannot make those adjustments as well as what Southeast Melbourne have shown to be able to do in tough situations. The games that Illawarra lost earlier in the season against Adelaide, against Southeast Melbourne, was because they could not adjust on the go. Southeast Melbourne have just proved to us that down in a hole, they were 20 points down, scored 17 points in over 1.5 quarters, came back and won the game. Now,
how were their adjustments against Perth?
Yeah, but it's
Well,
still one
stop
game.
The masked warrior, mate.
They're going to be able to have opportunity to make these adjustments throughout a series now. I don't think they're going to beat Illawarra because I think Illawarra's scoring is too good, but they are definitely in with a shot. And if they get to a 5-game series, hey, it's open slather. Josh?
Yeah, I just think you're bang on. Like, it's the thing is as well. Like, I'm not campaigning that this team's going to make the grand final series or win an NBL championship, but you can't write them off. They've continually showed at different parts of the season that it doesn't matter if they have a lean patch of form. They'll go and win the next 4 or 5 games, and they'll look like the best team in the NBL. So, I think you're bang on with the depth, and it's so tough because when we speak about depth and different looks and different rotations and everything like that, Illawarra Hawks are the perfect matchup, but we'll break all that sort of stuff down next week in the show. But I think if we're talking from a standpoint of the question being, are Southeast Melbourne a genuine shot to win the championship, or is this a 3-horse race? I think that you can't say that this is a 3-horse race. Like, we've spoken about Illawarra and we've spoken about Perth. We haven't even spoken about Melbourne. This team is the oldest list in the NBL. They're going to be having a month off playing basketball. Like, that alone is a disadvantage. Let alone how the way they've come in. Yeah, well, I don't want to get another phone call from Melbourne, but, realistically, they haven't come in with this hot form at all. But because they aren't playing and they're not showing everyone what they're capable of right now or the poor form, no one's speaking about them. So I think the thing, obviously, that kills Southeast Melbourne Phoenix is the recency sort of stuff going on. Obviously, the disappointing loss to the Perth Wildcats. Like I said, if you go back and check that game out, they looked home at 3/4 time. Like I said to everyone, I was messaging my mates, we're done. All right, we'll see you later, Adelaide or Sydney, in that next game at RSC Arena. Like, it just looked like it was going that way. So I think to rule them out would be definitely disrespectful to not only Josh King and this organisation, but it's just not going to happen. We can't rule the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix out of the NBL finals.
Jez, if they are going to succeed, who is it going to have to be on the Southeast Melbourne team that is going to lead them to victory?
Right. It's obviously got to be, like, Matt Hurt's going to have a blinder, but he's had a blinder all season. That's why he's on the All-NBL first team. He's like a given. His stats, his work is going to be there. They need to find consistency. I think Nathan Sobey needs to step up in that whole series. He's got to be a genuine scorer and be a consistent scorer, because his form has been a little bit of a roller coaster all season, really. And I know it had a lot to do with Derek Walton Jr. being in and out, but since then, I think he still has shown signs where he's having dips and just disappearing like he did. He went, I think it was 0 from 7 in the first half of that game against Adelaide. Like, that sort of stuff can't happen. And for me, like, one of the positives I took out of the game against Adelaide for Southeast Melbourne was Malik Lewis. He really stood up. He took Montrezl Harrell on. He caused trouble. You saw so many sort of loose turnovers, bad passes, because he was getting Trez was getting heavily marked by Lewis, and it sort of changed the game and slowed him down. I think the whole sort of third quarter there, Trez did nothing, didn't get on the score sheet. He missed 2 free throws, and that's all he did in that third quarter himself. So I think Malik Lewis is going to play a really big role on the defensive end of things more than the offensive end, and they need Sobey to step up.
And Josh, you think it might be Geordie Hunter?
Yeah, I think Geordie Hunter's the key to this particular game from, a Southeast Melbourne Phoenix perspective. It's what he does to allow a Matt Hurt to play his natural game. Defensively, he's just so sound. I know his last 2 games, he's been a little bit under form, I guess you could say. But like when you go back and look at the 2 games, the 3 games realistically that these 2 teams have played against each other, Geordie Hunter had 23 points and 6 rebounds early on in the season, and then backed it up with 11 points and 6 rebounds the second game as well, and showed his importance to this team against this particular team as well. So I think Geordie Hunter's the key player and the key matchup for this particular game because he presents an awkward task for Sam Froling and also the whole team. I think Sam Froling's a better matchup for him because I'm not sure Mason Peatling will be able to contain him down low. And then obviously you've got Lachlan Albridge coming on as well. But yeah, I just think he's probably the most important player because I think we know what Sobey's going to produce. I think we know what Matt Hurt's going to produce. And one person we haven't even spoken about is Derek Walton Jr. potentially going to play. Like there's a chance, there was rumours that the play-in tournament was where they were targeting with that hamstring injury. Well, the play-in tournament will be nearly a month after these finals kick off. So is he a sniff to play? That's a big boost. But yeah, Geordie Hunter for mine, boys.
Yeah, but like I don't know where Geordie Hunter stands in Southeast Melbourne at the moment. You like just purely looking at his time on court over the past almost month. Say from the 22nd of January, he played 5 games out of 7 where he's played less than 20 minutes. He's been playing sort of an average there of around, I don't know, I would say less than 15 minutes, maybe with the 2 games, like the games where he went over. I don't really know where he is in their lineup at the moment. I got burnt a couple of times having on the punt because I thought Geordie Hunter was going to be the key man in some of these matchups leading into the play-in. But he just didn't get any time on the court. So as important, I also think he has been an important part of the success that they've had. But all of a sudden, you're just seeing his numbers just get reduced. He's not playing in these big moments anymore. So, I don't know. Like playing 12 minutes against Perth, he got 4 fouls, but he wasn't fouled out. Against Adelaide, and he only played 16 minutes. So.
All right, boys. Yeah. They've had enough. Listen to you to go on.
22 minutes. He's only been playing all season.
All right, we've been speaking for more minutes than he's played in the last 3 games. So we need to shut this down and wrap it all up. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Basketball Fix podcast and all the channels. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, or if it's still called iTunes, I have no idea. Head over to thebasketballfix.com. There's a big bunch of articles there you can read about game previews, about players, and about thoughts and opinions from a whole host of people driven by fans for fans. And of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and I think Josh even has a TikTok going, possibly.
Yeah, slightly. But one more thing as well, mate. If you want to not have the party pooper anymore, like the video in the YouTube comments, and we'll get Birdo back on next week.
Just because you're getting a bit of challenge. Birdo's so passive, he's too kind to call you out and all the bullshit talk.
I'm muting both of them now, so anyone else listening here, I've muted both Josh and Jeremy so I can finish this episode. Thank you very much for listening and watching. We love producing great basketball content for all of you. And of course, we hope you've gotten your basketball fix.
Turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance. Oh,